after Tamburlaine Part 1, what can Marlowe do for an encore? Where is Tamburlaine going to go? A character who just keeps winning and winning and winning and raising the bar with his craziness and braggadocio. Where are you going to go? The answer is he's going to keep winning and then not. So we have it's five more acts of Tamburlaine going undefeated in battle and facing some new problems. We face Christians for the first time. We have people from Buda and Bohemia, people who are the ancestors of like the west side of Cleveland. There are actual Christians on stage. They also lose to Tamburlaine. Everybody still loses to Tamburlaine, except the forces of time, illness, etc. Xenocraty passes away. We have, and to nobody's surprise or nobody's appropriate surprise, Tamburlaine doesn't handle that well at all. Why would he handle that well? Why would he adapt? He behaves very badly and rants about invading heaven and getting her back. Something with a classical precedent, though only a slight one. There are various Greek and Roman heroes who go to the underworld to try to get somebody back. Usually with, at best, mixed success, occasionally doing all right. He is, we see Tamburlaine as a father, child rearing, surprisingly a problematic father, someone who in fact kills one of his sons because there's no place to go but crazier. And then someone who eventually becomes ill and dies after an act of blasphemy that's horrifying even by the fairly blasphemous standards of the previous play, right? Where he burns a holy book, a Koran, a book that the Christian English audience doesn't believe in. But nonetheless, he pretty clearly becomes ill after that and dies. Even dying, he can still beat his military enemies. He will never lose on the battlefield. That is part of the formula. The vicarious enjoyment that the audience gets from Tamburlaine is that he is invincible on the battlefield. And, historical figure Timur, the did in fact never lose and did found this dynasty, but as we'll see later, Marlowe doesn't really care about history. With the exception of the Massacre at Paris, which you'll be surprised to find is largely accurate, he is wildly inaccurate all the damn time. He does not care. He will never. Marlowe, even less than Shakespeare, is not willing to let historical fact get in the way of a good story. What Tamburlaine doesn't do is change or grow or develop in any way. Crazy stays crazy. Still crazy after all these acts. He actually decompensates. Now, we're used to characters who have a development, an arc. People who are learning screenwriting, playwriting, creative writing of various kinds are told to build in a character arc where a character starts someplace and grows and they go on a journey. Tamburlaine's journey is pretty much straight. Like the structure and like there's what they tell you in high school, they call in high school the rising and the falling action. It builds up, there's a climax, and then it goes down. We're used to that. That's how Shakespeare works. Shakespeare is largely innovating that, at least in terms of the English stage. Marlowe doesn't do it. He doesn't. The trajectory of Tamburlaine Part 1 is just up, 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 up. To the extent where you're like, there's gonna be a come down, there's gonna be a come down, he's gonna come down, he's gonna come down, he's gonna collapse. And no, he just keeps winning. Huh. Tamburlaine Part 2, he keeps going up and going down. He's up, Xenocraty dies. It's a zigzag up and down. It's not a clear arc where he's rising and rising and then falling and falling. He doesn't operate like Macbeth. He doesn't operate like Brutus and Julius Caesar. He doesn't operate like Shakespeare's Richard III. He doesn't work that way. He also doesn't grow as a character. he does not gain any meaningful insight. We can say Macbeth isn't better off at the end of the play, but has a deeper self understanding in Act 5 than he does in Act 1, where he learns something about himself and we learn something with him. Marlowe doesn't play that at all. Marlowe's characters do not change and grow. Or when they change, as like in part one, when Xenocrates goes from like, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, to like, how dare you speak ill of him? I'm worried I've lost his love. There are just sudden shifts, something also from the medieval drama. One way to read this is a cruder, less sophisticated drama that does not yet have the kind of subtle bend of the character arc. On the other hand, I would make a positive case for this in that Marlowe's Marlowe's characterization, while in some ways less formally satisfying, is some ways truer to life. Because in life, and here I'm gonna misquote Sigmund Freud by saying sometimes crazy stays crazy. Some people's psychological ailments are resistant to treatment. Some people have what psychiatrists now call personality disorders, not illnesses per se, things that can't really be treated. They're just like that. Narcissists don't want to be cured. They like themselves the way they are. Tamerlane's not going to give up his grandiosity. He's not going to gain insight. Suffering actually teaches him nothing, and in this he is appallingly familiar. He is, in fact, appallingly normal. In some ways, Tamburlaine, though an exceptional figure in lots of ways, and how much he gets away with, is a perfectly ordinary crazy person, or a perfectly ordinary antisocial personality. That antisocial personality in your life, gotta stay antisocial. Not gonna learn, not gonna grow. The only thing you can do is like get physical distance from them and wait for them to die. Yes, like why is Tamburlaine not coming to invade more places? Because he just dropped dead. Yes. So he has a whole bunch of setbacks which he responds to emotionally, but doesn't really grow or react in depth. Remember, this is someone who couldn't change his practice of like murdering all the women and children in a captive city if the love of his life begged him to do it because it's her hometown. Can't change. Resistant to change. Identifies himself with being unchanging. It's a different, in this, think back to Faustus. Does Faustus change and grow? What is his character arc? Is he vacillating back and forth between two different positions of hope and despair, of repentance and obdurance and obstinacy? I think we remember. If we don't remember, we'll read the B text in about 6 weeks. So we meet Tamburlaine goes out kind of as he comes in, bragging, ranting, being larger than life, but also being relatively flat, relatively two-dimensional in certain ways, lacking a certain kind of emotional depth, but also echoing genuine people whom we encounter in the world who actually do lack emotional insight. Yes, Tamerlane doesn't know what's up with him, and his account for what's up with him is tendentious at best. Does Faustus know what's going on with Faustus? I think he doesn't. Let's get used to this particular kind of neurotic Marlowe protagonist who does not have full access to their own inner life and aren't looking. Just aren't looking. These guys aren't Hamlet in that they don't wonder what's wrong with them. Tamburlaine would claim nothing is wrong with him. I beg to differ. Now, I'm psychologizing and pathologizing. Another way to view this is, remember, this play ends describing Tamburlaine as the scourge of God. putting him in terms of, though he seems to be very much here, even more an atheist, he seems to be the tool of a higher power. There is that way of reading it. There is also the overreacher argument, Harry Levin's overreacher argument, in the larger sense of these are characters who are Nietzschean, who are, or Renaissance figures who are aspiring to go beyond traditional conventional limits. The positive version of Tamburlaine is a character who keeps saying, why can't I do that? You say I can't do that. Let's find out. Let's find out. I think I can do that. I'm convinced I can do that. Oh, look, I can. You were wrong. So, two cheers for Tamburlaine. It is the case that Tamburlaine's opponents are also not attractive figures, right? Um, what do you get to? What do you, part of the stage appeal of Tamburlaine was clearly the vicarious enjoyment of the big bully picking on, as the Marx says, the littler bullies, right? And making them, locking them in cages and having them dash their brains out, hooking them up to chariots and driving around the stage with the other kings pulling their chariots, because those are bad guys too. He's just the biggest bad guy. See him beat the other bad guys as supervillain number one is part of the fun. And then we can all feel good at the end of what's essentially Act 10 because he did a bad thing and died. Even the Elizabethans are not down with burning the Koran. Holy cannoli.